My name is Emily, 28, trapped with my parents and younger brother Liam in a cramped apartment in Colorado's quiet suburbs. My marketing job's modest pay keeps the lights on, water running, and internet alive. Bear, here. Margaret's cousin Earring intervened with her name, Young. My mom's never said to me my reagents in the industry this festering the bush. Whatever fierceness festers, poisoning every strained family dinner. You're just a tenant here, Emily, Dad sneered once, his words cutting deep. Only Liam sees the burden I bear. His quiet glances my sole comfort in this suffocating home. On New Year's Eve 2023, I trudged home after a punishing shift, my heavy jacket soaked from a sudden sleet storm, the bitter scent of spilled tea staining my cuffs. The living room was a mockery of festivity, lit by flickering fairy lights from 2 years ago, their weak glow casting shadows on the peeling walls. My mother, Susan, slammed a tray of dry roast beef onto the dining table, her lips pursed in silent fury. My father, Richard, sprawled at the table's head, his fingers wrapped around a beer bottle, eyes boring into the chandelier as if it could erase his failures. Dinner began in a suffocating silence, the clink of cutlery and a warped holiday tune from the kitchen speaker the only sounds, each note twisting the tension tighter. I scooped green beans onto my plate, forcing a smile at my brother Liam, 19, whose wary eyes mirrored my own dread. Then, without warning, Richard's fist crashed down, his fork skittering across the table. The sound was a gunshot in the quiet, and I jolted, heart hammering. Emily, he snarled, his gaze pinning me like a predator. You're a leech, bleeding us dry. Get out of my house. The words were a blade, slicing through the air. I froze, my breath caught. Certain I'd misheard, Susan let out a high, panicked laugh, her eyes darting nervously as if to dismiss the cruelty. But Richard's stare was merciless, his jaw clenched with years of pent-up rage. The room seemed to collapse inward, airless and cold. Liam's spoon trembled midair, a piece of bread crumbling in his grip. He gaped at me, his face drained of color, shock etching lines where youth should be. I set my spoon down, hands shaking, voice barely steady. What did you just say? You heard me, he spat, voice low and venomous. This is my house, and I'm sick of carrying you. Pack your bags. I was speechless. The betrayal a physical weight. I hadn't stayed out of weakness. I could afford my own place, live independently. I stayed because they needed me. Because Richard lost his job 4 years ago in a drunken outburst, leaving debts that still haunted us, and Susan's part-time community center gig couldn't cover basics. My salary kept this apartment afloat, and now, on New Year's Eve, they branded me a parasite. Susan opened her mouth, but Richard's glare silenced her. It's done, Susan. She's out. Liam's voice cracked, raw with fear. If you can throw her out like this, what's stopping you from coming for me next? His words hung unanswered, a challenge to the strangers our parents had become. Susan's hands twisted in her lap, her silence a louder betrayal than Richard's words. I took a ragged breath, swallowing the scream clawing at my throat. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of a scene. If they wanted me gone, I'd leave, but they'd choke on the consequences. Fine, I said, my voice a blade of its own, cutting through their smug victory. Richard's lips curled in a cruel smirk, as if he'd finally crushed something fragile in me. Susan stared at the table, her fingers shredding a napkin, maybe stunned, maybe indifferent. I stood, my half-eaten plate clattering in the sink, and paused at the kitchen doorway. You'll see what this house is without me, I said, my voice low, not a threat but a promise born of truth. As I turned to Liam, our eyes locked in a silent vow. He was the only one I'd fight for in this broken home. No one spoke. The clinking utensils faltered, appetites dead. Behind me, Susan's whisper to Richard pierced the quiet. You've gone too far. This time, his cold reply followed. She's been asking for it. I stormed into my room, slamming the door behind me, the echo a defiant stand against the betrayal still ringing in my ears. No tears, no pleas. I refused to give them that power. They wanted me gone, so I'd vanish. But come morning, the air conditioning would die, the lights would flicker out, and this apartment would freeze in their self-inflicted ruin. The squeaky hinges of the door groaned like a dying vow as I locked it, sealing my resolve. I wasn't here to argue or beg. Their choice was made, and mine was forged in silence, pure, unyielding action. I yanked my suitcase from under the bed, its wheels scraping the floor like a battle cry, and tore open my wardrobe. Each shirt, each journal, every trinket bought with grueling overtime hours was folded with deliberate care, a quiet rebellion against their ingratitude. This room, once my sanctuary from their endless demands, now felt like a cage for someone cast out. As I packed my last sweater, a faint rustle outside my door made my heart lurch. Oh, a soft knock followed. "Emily!" Liam's voice trembled, barely a whisper, as if he feared the walls themselves would betray him. "Is it locked? Please, let me in." I'd opened the door and he slipped inside, his face pale, shoulders hunched under a weight heavier than the winter storm raging outside. "Are you really leaving?" His eyes, red-rimmed but defiant, searched mine for a lifeline. Liam never cried in front of me. He was too strong for that, but the cracks in his voice betrayed his fear. I nodded, my throat tight. "They said it, didn't they? I have no reason to stay." He collapsed onto the bed, his gaze sweeping the room, now stripped of warmth, like a battlefield after surrender. "But if you go, who's paying for the electricity? The internet? Dad's already behind on debts to those loan sharks. You know they can't survive without you." I didn't answer right away. Liam wasn't naive. He saw the truth, and that's what terrified him. I wasn't just his sister. I was the fragile thread holding this fractured home together. "I know," I said softly, my voice steady despite the storm in my chest. "But I can't be their ATA forever, Liam. I deserve to breathe, to live a life that's mine." He stared at the floor, his hands balled into fists so tight his knuckles whitened, silent for what felt like an eternity. Then, in a whisper that cut deeper than any shout, he said, "I want to run away with you. I can't stay here without you." I froze, my heart splintering. "You can't," I said gently, kneeling beside him, my hand gripping his arm. "You're still in college, still a minor. They'd drag you back, and I won't let them trap you like they did me." His voice broke, desperate. "Then where are you going? Who's going to protect you out there?" I exhaled, forcing calm into my words. "I'll crash at Claire's for a few days. I've got savings for a small place. I always had a plan, just didn't think I'd need it so soon." Liam's eyes locked on his lap, his fists trembling. "They don't deserve you, Emily. I overheard Mom last week telling her friend you're milking them dry, like you're the one draining them." The word stabbed, a fresh wound layered over their betrayal. I sat beside him, my hand on his shoulder, grounding us both. "That doesn't matter now. What matters is you don't drown in their mess. Hold on a little longer, Liam. When you're old enough, I'll get you out, I swear it." He nodded, his jaw tight, as if etching my promise into his soul. "You'll still text me, right?" "Every day," I said, my smile a fragile bridge between us. As he stood to leave, he turned back, his silhouette framed by the dim hallway light. The look in his eyes wasn't just sadness. It was the gut-wrenching truth that he'd now faced two strangers who'd stopped being parents long ago. "Be careful, Emily," he whispered, his voice cracking. "They're not done hurting us." I continued packing, rifling through every drawer and corner with fierce precision, ensuring no trace of me remained in this ungrateful house. By midnight, my suitcase stood by the door, its weight a testament to my severed ties. The apartment was deathly silent, as if it mourned the family it once held. I pulled out my phone, fingers trembling with resolve, and logged into every bill account. Electricity, internet, water, even the secondary credit card I'd opened to bail Mom out of her secret gambling debts. In under 10 minutes, I erased my banking information from them all, severing their lifeline with surgical finality. No warnings, no explanations. My presence had been their warning for 4 years, and they'd spat on it. As I wheeled my suitcase down the hall, its wheels grinding against the worn floorboards, I glimpsed the living room light seeping through the door's crack. No one stirred to stop me. No one called my name, no shred of remorse. The TV blared a New Year's countdown, its fake cheers a cruel mockery of the fracture in this home. I paused, hearing Richard's low mutter through the wall, "Good riddance." She was always a burden. Susan's faint reply followed, tinged with unease. "Richard, what if we can't manage without her?" His scoff was the last sound I heard as I opened the front door. The icy wind lashed my face like a whip, but I didn't flinch. I felt liberated, as if the cold burned away their chains. For the first time in years, I loaded my suitcase into the trunk. Its thud, a declaration of freedom, slid into the driver's seat and slammed the door shut. My hands gripped the steering wheel, knuckles white, and I knew one truth above all: my life was mine again. This New Year's night marked the dawn of the life I deserved. I drove away from that cursed street, its dim lights fading in my rearview mirror like a nightmare dissolving at dawn. That New Year's Eve, no snow fell, but my heart was encased in ice, not from the weather, but from a brutal awakening. I'd thought I was saving a family, but I'd only fed their dependence and scorn. I arrived at Claire's condo near midnight, exhausted but unbowed. Claire, my steadfast colleague, lived just a 15-minute drive from our office in a cozy one-bedroom haven. When she opened the door and saw me, loot case in hand, eyes shadowed by betrayal, she didn't pry. Her face softened with understanding, and she pulled me into a fierce hug. "Stay as long as you need, Emily. You're safe now," she said, her voice a lifeline in the dark. She led me to the living room, where a pull-out couch waited, my temporary refuge for the weeks ahead. As I sank onto it, Claire lingered, her hand on my shoulder. "I've heard whispers about your dad's temper at the office," she added softly. "You don't have to go back to that." The next morning, as dawn bled crimson over the sleek rows of modern townhouses, I sat at Claire's small glass table, my laptop glowing like a weapon in the quiet. I opened it with steely determination and began my silent retaliation. Logging into the utility payment portal, I saw my name still listed as the responsible party, a bitter reminder of their dependence. I clicked remove. Pop-up flashed. "Are you sure you want to leave this account? After removal, bills will no longer be automatically paid." I confirmed without a flicker of doubt. Then came the internet. Mother Gas and the streaming account Mom obsessively used to escape her guilt-ridden nights. One by one, I severed my credit card from every system, each click a chisel breaking their chains on me. They'd turd my support as their right. Now they'd choke on the void I left behind. As I closed the final account, my phone buzzed. A venomous text from Susan. "Emily, how dare you abandon us? You owe us everything." I stared at it, my blood boiling, but deleted it without reply, refusing to let her guilt trip claw me back. I leaned back in the chair and exhaled, not from spite, but from a liberation so profound it felt sacred. For the first time in years, I'd acted for myself alone. No more bills, no more being bled dry under the guise of family duty. The next few days unfolded in a fragile, unfamiliar peace. I went to work on time, my steps lighter, shared dinners with Claire, her laughter a balm to my wounds, and read before bed, losing myself in stories where courage triumphed. Her condo, simple yet radiant with warmth, was a sanctuary where no one screamed at me for daring to dream of a life unbound. One evening, as we sipped tea, Claire's eyes met mine with quiet strength. "You're rebuilding, Emily," she said softly. "They'll regret casting you out when they see what you become." Her words ignited a spark of hope, a promise that this was not just an end, but a fierce new beginning. The fragile peace shattered like glass on Tuesday afternoon. While I sorted documents at the office, my phone vibrated relentlessly in my pocket, a storm of notifications clawing for attention. 6 missed calls from Susan, 3 from Richard, and a chilling text from Liam. "Power's out. Dad's screaming, smashing things. He blames you." I didn't reply, not out of indifference, but because I'd poured my heart into them for too long, only to be cast aside. My resolve hardened like steel. They'd reap what they sowed. An hour later, another message from Susan. "Emily, what have you done? No internet, no TV, no lights? Your dad's losing it. Fix this." I read it, my pulse steady, guilt a distant memory. They'd banished me. They had no right to demand I fund the home that spat me out. That night, as Claire and I chopped vegetables for a quick dinner, my phone ruptured again, its ring slicing through our laughter. I hesitated, but a gut instinct urged me to answer. "Emily, everything's falling apart." Susan's voice quaked, a mix of terror and accusation. "The power's gone, the bill's unpaid, we're living like animals because of you." I leaned against the counter, my voice calm but razor-sharp. "Who do you think kept the lights on for 4 years? Her reacquainted hunch began, her voice cracked, tinged with shame. But Richard said you were just paying your key. Exactly. I cut her off, each word a deliberate strike. You swallowed his lies. Now live with the consequences. I hung up, her desperate sob. Emily, we're your family. Cut off by the silence. I thought the darkness in their apartment would force them to adapt, but I'd underestimated Richard's stubborn pride and desperate. The next morning, an email from my bank jolted me awake. Alert, suspicious login attempt from an unfamiliar device. I checked, heart pounding. 4 failed attempts, followed by a password reset request. Richard's name burned in my mind. I called Liam, my voice tight with urgency. He answered in a whisper, fear lacing every word. Emily, Dad's trying to hack your bank account. I caught him rifling through Mom's old planner, cursing your name, scribbling passwords. He said he'll take what's owed. I gripped the phone, fury and fear colliding. Thanks, Liam. Stay safe. I'll handle it. I sank into Claire's couch, hands flying across my laptop, changing every password, bank accounts, emails, streaming services, even the food delivery apps they'd leeched off. Layer upon layer of security rose like a fortress, a silent vow. I was no longer the docile daughter they could plunder. As I logged the final account, Claire glanced over, her face grim. They're not going to stop, are they? She asked. I shook my head, my jaw set. No, but neither am I. I thought locking down my accounts, updating passwords, activating 2-step verification, severing every digital tie, would end their grasp on me. I hoped they'd learn to survive without my support, but I was painfully naive. My family couldn't function without a scapegoat, and with me gone, their world unraveled into chaos. 3 days after I left, Liam's text hit during my shift. Internet's dead. Mom cooked on a camping stove last night, no microwave. This morning, Dad kicked the breaker box, screaming your name. I didn't respond, my heart a stone. I set my phone down, drawing a deep breath to anchor myself. Their apartment was a sinking ship, and this was only the first wave. That night, as I left the office, my phone buzzed with relentless fury. 7 missed calls from Susan. On the 8th, against my better judgment, I answered. Her voice was raw, a jagged mix of tears, rage, and desperation. Emily, what have you done? The apartment's a tomb. No lights, no TV, no hot water. Your dad's tearing the place apart. I leaned against a street lamp, my voice cold and deliberate. Stop paying for what I funded. You're on your own now, aren't you? You can't do this to us, she shrieked, her voice cracking like brittle glass. This is your home. I clenched my jaw, steadying the fire within. No, it's the place where Dad threw me out on New Year's Eve. Where you stood by and let him, I said, each word a honed blade. Silence followed, broken only by her ragged breathing. Then, in a whisper dripping with fear, she said, Richard says you're destroying us on purpose. He's talking about making you pay. I let out a dry, bitter laugh, exhaustion seeping into my bones. I'm not getting revenge, Mom. I'm living my life. What kills you is that it's no longer yours to control. I hung up, cutting off her choked plea. Emily, please, come back. Before it could pierce me, I was done explaining. They'd thrived on my silent sacrifices. Now they'd face my unyielding absence. As I walked to my car, a shadow flickered across the parking lot, too deliberate to be a passerby. My pulse spiked, but no one emerged. Claire's warning echoed in my mind. They're not going to let you go quietly. I gripped my keys tighter, knowing this was far from over. The next morning, a shrill bank alert jolted me awake. Suspicious login attempt. Possible fraud. Lambert's. My stomach churned. Only Richard was desperate enough to claw into my accounts. I called Liam, my voice taut with urgency. He answered in a hushed, trembling whisper. Emily, Dad's tearing through Mom's old planners, muttering about taking back what's ours. He's been at the computer all morning, cursing when it locks him out. I closed my eyes, a sharp pain gripping my chest. He's saying you'll regret crossing him, Emily. He's scaring me, Liam added, his voice breaking. I forced a bitter chuckle. Good. The alerts are doing their job. But Liam's tone grew darker. He's not just angry. He's planning something, keeps talking about teaching you a lesson. My grip tightened on the phone. Lock the doors if anything feels off, Liam. Call me immediately. I will. Phone's on me all night. I hung up, diving into my bank account, bolstering security with a 16th password, special symbols, and fingerprint verification, an impenetrable wall against his greed. Sleep eluded me that night, a gnawing dread coiling in my gut. I was right to fear. Zahn broke with a violent thudding at Claire's door. "Emily, someone's pounding out there," Claire shouted, her voice laced with panic. I rushed from the bathroom, hair dripping, heart racing, and saw her frozen, eyes wide. "Who is it?" "It's bad. Really bad," she stammered. I crept to the peephole, and my blood ran cold. Richard loomed in the hallway, fists battering the door like a siege, his bloodshot eyes wild, reeking of whiskey. "Emily, open this door, you traitor! You think you can ruin us and walk away?" he bellowed, his voice a thunderclap echoing through the condo. Claire's hand shook, clutching the key. "Police?" I nodded, already dialing 911, my resolve ironclad. He threw me out. He doesn't get to invade my life now, I thought, staring at his frenzied shadow. "It's my father, threatening me, trying to break in," I told the dispatcher, voice steady despite my pounding heart. "Officers are 3 minutes out. Stay inside, keep the door locked," they replied. Richard's roars grew louder. "You're nothing without me, Emily. You'll beg to come back," Claire whispered, trembling. "This is insane." I nodded, eyes fixed on the door. "He's lost control. That's why he's here." Sirens wailed, red lights flashing like a warning. Heavy boots stormed the stairwell and an officer knocked. "Police, open up. Stay calm." I let them in, stepping back as they faced Richard. "Sir, you're causing a disturbance. Leave now," one ordered, voice firm. "Whom's my daughter? I have every right," Richard roared, face crimson with rage. The officer remained calm. "Not like this. She's reported a threat. Leave, or we act." Richard lunged toward me, fists raised, screaming, "You owe me everything!" I recoiled, palms clenched, pulse hammering as the officer swiftly pinned him. "Keep your distance, sir," they warned. "A thief stealing from her family," he spat, voice warped with fury. Those words, "I have rights," resonated like a curse, years of his manipulation distilled into a single phrase. I stepped forward, locking eyes with the man who was no longer my father. "I owe you nothing," I said, voice clear as steel. "You cast me out. Live with your choice." Puffs snapped shut, their click a final verdict. His eyes burned, not with paternal care, but with the desperation of a man stripped of power. "You'll pay, Emily. This isn't over," he hissed as officers dragged him away, his shouts clawing at the hallway's walls. The door closed, and Claire's hand found mine. "Are you okay?" I nodded, throat tight, hands still shaking. "I didn't want this, but it's done." "You stood your ground," she said, squeezing my shoulder. "That's strength." I sank onto the couch, pulse flowing. A text from Liam buzzed. "Dad's arrested," I replied. "Stay safe. Call if anything happens." As I set the phone down, a chilling realization hit. This was only the beginning of his vengeance. I thought Richard's arrest would bring calm, but I was foolishly optimistic. 3 days later, a text from Liam sent ice through my veins. "Sis, your car's parked outside our apartment." Heart racing, I called him. "Liam, my car's at Claire's. You sure?" "Positive," he whispered, voice tense. "It's here. Window cracked. Mom's tea packet inside. You need to see this." I leapt up, pulse hammering. My car shouldn't be there. I'd taken everything. Only one truth fit. Susan had stolen it. I called Claire, voice shaking to check the spare key. "Still in the drawer, untouched," she confirmed. They'd made a secret copy, and Susan, who'd played the victim with tearful pleas, had betrayed me again. Fury replaced fear. I drove Claire's car to the old neighborhood, tires screeching as I turned onto the street. My silver hatchback sat in front of the apartment, its quiet presence a lie. I stepped out, fists clenched, and approached. The door handle was dusty, but inside, a soda can, worn slippers, and a pharmacy receipt dated yesterday, Susan's name scrawled across it. My blood boiled. She'd been living in my car. I called Liam, voice low. "You home?" "Yeah, you're here?" "Outside. Where's Mom?" "Just got back from the store, acting like nothing's wrong." I nodded, though he couldn't see. Stay upstairs, Liam. Don't get involved. I rang the doorbell, each chime a challenge. Susan opened the door, hair in a messy bun, clutching a green wallet, her face hardening at my sight. Emily, what do you want? She snapped, eyes darting nervously. I met her gaze, unflinching. You stole my car, didn't you? She scoffed, stepping aside. It was just sitting there. You left it behind. I borrowed it. Borrowed? I let out a sharp, humorless laugh. You've been driving it for days, using my gas, sleeping in it. Where's my tablet? I stepped into the living room, spotting the empty shelf where it once sat. Susan froze, then said, voice flat, I sold it. No remorse, no excuse. For money? I pressed, heart pounding. For your father's groceries. This place is falling apart because of you, she said, her tone accusing. I stood still, rage simmering. You think you can just take what's mine? I pulled out my phone, voice steady. I'm calling the police. Her eyes widened, panic breaking her facade. I'm your mother. You can't do this to me. Stole my car, sold my tablet, I said, calm but lethal. I forgave your silence on New Year's Eve. This is the last straw. I dialed 911. As I waited, Susan's voice rose desperate. Emily, you're tearing us apart. I ignored her, steel in my spine. Police arrived and I laid out the evidence, the receipt, GPS logs tracking the car's city routes. I demanded my property and pressed theft charges. Susan tried to argue but had no proof of ownership. An officer addressed me. We'll have her gather any remaining items. You can file a formal theft report. I looked at Susan, her face ashen, hands trembling. Emily, how can you do this to your own mother? She whispered, voice breaking. I stepped closer, voice soft but unyielding. You taught me to protect what's mine. I'm just following your lessons. I turned away, leaving her to face the wreckage of her choices, her stifled sob fading behind me. 3 days after the police hauled Richard away, a sinister message from an unknown number pierced my fragile calm. You think you've won? You'll pay for betraying your blood. I stared at the screen, my spine icing over, the words a venomous promise. No signature needed. Richard's malice was unmistakable. I checked the county jail portal, heart thundering, and saw crimson letters screaming, released on bail, dated mere hours ago. The message had followed like a predator's strike. I texted Liam. Dad's out. Who bailed him? He called, voice barely audible as if hiding from a storm. Uncle Greg, his old coworker. Yesterday I heard Dad begging for cash on the phone. This morning, Greg dropped off an envelope and left. I sank into Claire's couch, muscles coiling with dread. Greg? Fired for barroom brawls. Wasn't just a savior. He was an accomplice, fueling Richard's vengeance. Emily, Liam whispered, fear cracking his words. Dad's unhinged. Last night he swore to make you feel the pain of being cast out. He's plotting something dark. I bolted upright, leaving Claire's living room where the scent of her cooking clashed with my rising panic. She saw my ashen face and froze. What's happened? Richard's free. He's threatening me, I said, showing her the message. Claire's eyes widened. You can't stay here, Emily. He knows this address. I'll leave tonight, I said, voice resolute. Claire hugged me, her embrace a fleeting anchor. I called Sophie, a coworker who'd once offered her spare room when she heard I was unmoored. I'd refused before, hating to burden anyone, but now survival trumped pride. Come over, Emily. The room's yours, no questions, Sophie said, her warmth cutting through my fear. I packed swiftly, hands steady despite the chaos within. Clothes, laptops, documents, nothing more than what defined my new start. As dusk bled into night, Claire and I loaded my things into the car. I checked the condo's security cameras, smart locks, alarms, each click a defiance against Richard's reach. Claire gripped my shoulder. I'll call the cops at the first sign of trouble. Focus on you. I nodded, glancing back at the building, not fleeing but choosing life. On the drive to Sophie's, my phone buzzed again, a second message from the same number. Run all you want, Emily. Family's forever. I'll find you. My breath hitched, but I didn't falter. I screenshotted it, sending it to the police with my prior report, typing with deliberate precision. I'm being hunted by the man who was once my father. I fear for my safety. As I hit send, Claire's voice echoed in my mind from earlier. He's a cornered animal now. Be ready for anything. I knew Richard wouldn't relent, his pride a festering wound. But I was no longer the silent daughter he'd broken. If he marked me as prey, I'd be a fighter who struck back, unyielding and unafraid. That Saturday morning, I returned to the old apartment, the place I once called home, to retrieve what was left. I didn't go alone. A police officer accompanied me under a civil standby order I had filed 2 days earlier. Liam was already waiting on the balcony. He held a small backpack, his face showing how exhausted he was. "Are you sure you want to go in alone?" he asked quietly. Like even a loud noise might bring all the bad memories rushing back. I nodded, then turned to the officer. "I'm only here to collect my things. If they interfere or touch me, please intervene immediately." The door opened. My mother sat on the couch, clutching her wallet like it was the last thing she could control. My father stood in the kitchen, his gaze cold and silent. I didn't look at them. I just walked straight to the room that had been my only refuge for 4 long years. The old wardrobe had been emptied. My belongings were stuffed into 2 plastic bags. Some personal items, books, keepsakes, old photos were scattered across the floor. I picked everything up, packed them into my suitcase without letting myself think too much. They were no longer pieces of home, just remnants of a life I had already stepped away from. When I came back down dragging my final suitcase, my mother stood up abruptly. "You're not going to say anything? After everything, you're just going to leave in silence?" I paused, but didn't turn around. My voice was even, emotionless. "Plenty in the past and you never listened. It was your father's fault, not mine." I turned, looking her directly in the eyes for the first time in months. "You stayed silent while he humiliated me. You stood by when he kicked me out on New Year's Eve. You sold my belongings like I didn't even exist. And you think I owe you a goodbye?" She didn't answer. Her gaze dropped to the floor as if trying to disappear. My father stepped forward, still full of anger. "You think cutting ties is the solution? You're tarnishing your own family." I gave a small, cold laugh. "No, I'm just living what this family taught me. If you're not respected, don't stay." I pulled a folded document from my pocket, a copy of a restraining order petition. "Either of you sends another message, shows up where I live, or tries to access my accounts, I'll file this immediately. And next time, it won't just be a polite knock from the police." The officer standing beside me nodded in confirmation. "We've made a note in the record. Any further threats will be handled seriously." I turned to Liam. "You can stay a few more months, but if it becomes unbearable, I meant what I said. Just call me and I'll come get you immediately." He nodded without saying a word. Between us, there was a trust that didn't need to be spoken. I left that apartment for the last time without looking back. I didn't want to carry any more glances with me. Not from my mother, not from my father, not from the memories that had once weighed down my heart. That same day, I changed my phone number, canceled every account connected to the old address, and moved in with Sophie permanently. She helped me sign a lease for a small studio near my company. Quiet, bright, and most importantly, safe. I completely cut off contact with my family. No more messages, no more surprise, no more fear every time the doorbell rang. I spent the next few weeks rebuilding everything from scratch, opening a new bank account, buying a new tablet, setting up a new workspace, hanging up each picture on the wall myself. Every small action felt like a declaration. I had chosen this new life, and I deserved it. I knew that one day they might try to reach out. Maybe through a handwritten letter, a distant relative, or some story leaking onto social media. But I also knew this time I wasn't going back. 3 years have passed since I firmly walked away from my old family, as if cutting out a festering tumor from my life. I have built a new life, small, peaceful, and entirely mine. But deep down, I always thought about the one person still trapped there, Liam. He tried his best. He lived quietly in the apartment I once called home, enduring Dad's unpredictable anger, Mom's endless complaints, and the suffocating coldness that hung over the family. Every time he texted me, Liam tried to sound okay. "I'm fine, sis, it's all right." I'm used to it, but I knew no child should ever have to get used to being treated like a burden, like an unwanted shadow in their own home. I kept my promise. I was always just one call away. But Liam was different from me. He wanted to leave with dignity, on his own terms. "I'll hold on until I'm 20, he once said. "I don't want them to say I gave up halfway." And then that day finally came. When Liam turned 20, he didn't throw a party or post anything online. He simply sent me a short text. "Sis, I'm ready." I picked him up the next morning. The black backpack on his shoulder held only a few clothes, a couple of books, and a small framed photo, a picture of us from when I was in grad school. No one came to see him off. The old apartment sat silent, windows shut tight, curtains drawn, as if even the sunlight might reveal the emptiness inside. "Not taking much with you?" I asked as we loaded his bag into the trunk. Liam shrugged and gave a soft smile. "The rest isn't worth bringing." He moved into the dorms at the state university where I'd once studied. I helped him with enrollment, bought him supplies, and we had a simple dinner at a taco stand nearby. We sat across from each other, smiling like two people who had finally woken up from a long nightmare. "Do you think they'll try to find you?" I asked without meeting his eyes. "Definitely," Liam replied, surprisingly calm. "But I'll do what you did, cut them off. They don't have any power over me anymore." I squeezed his hand tightly, unable to hide how proud I was of him. Since then, we've stayed in close contact. Sometimes he calls just to brag about a good grade or to laugh about a weird roommate or a professor obsessed with green tea. But every time he calls, I can hear it. His voice getting brighter, freer, no longer weighed down by anyone else's expectation. And my parents? After Liam and I left, everything completely collapsed. Dad couldn't hold down a job for long, constantly arguing with supervisors, quitting, then moving to another dead-end job. Mom took a part-time position at a local cafe, but her paycheck couldn't even cover the bills. Within a year, they were evicted from the old apartment for unpaid rent. The last I heard, through a distant relative, they were living in a run-down duplex on the outskirts of the city, an area known for high crime rates and terrible living conditions. They sent a letter to my old address, passed through someone we barely knew. Inside was a short, bitter paragraph filled with blame and a few desperate pleas. But I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say and nothing left to give. Everything I had, I used to rebuild my own life. No more debts to the past. One spring afternoon, Liam and I sat by the lake after class, the breeze playing with our hair, the setting sun pinking the sky pink. He turned to me and smiled. "You know, no matter what happens, I'm grateful I have you. If it weren't for you, I probably wouldn't believe I could live a different life." I squeezed his hand and looked up at the vibrant sky, and I know this for sure. Nothing is worth sacrificing yourself for people who refuse to change. We didn't need a traditional family, we just needed each other. Two kids who once lost their way, now walking forward on a path no one could force us off. Our story isn't just about escaping a toxic family. It's a testament to reclaiming our lives. Emily and Liam didn't merely walk away. They shattered the chains of guilt and obligation that bound them to pain. Blood may tie us to others, but it doesn't owe us loyalty when respect is absent. True happiness isn't born from enduring endless wounds. It rises from the bravery to choose yourself, even when all you carry is a suitcase and a fragile spark of hope. The lesson here is stark, yet liberating. You are not obligated to save those who drown you. Sometimes the greatest act of love is letting go, of toxic ties, of misplaced duty, of a past that no longer serves you. Emily and Liam built a new family, not of blood but of trust and mutual strength, proving that home is where you are valued. What do you think of their choice? Was it a necessary shield for their survival, or did they cross a line in severing all ties? Share your thoughts below. Your perspective could spark a deeper conversation. Follow for more raw, emotional stories that challenge how we define family and freedom.